It was an autumn afternoon in London, the kind when a veil of fog filtered through the bustling streets and each corner seemed steeped in mystery. I, Dr. John Watson, found myself engaged in routine correspondence when a knock at our door signalled an unexpected visitor. Sherlock Holmes, ever alert to unusual circumstances, rose from his armchair with a curious glint in his eye. The visitor, a lady of noble bearing, yet tempered by evident distress, entered our familiar sitting room at 221B Baker Street. Her presence commanded attention not just by her aristocratic air, but by the heaviness of her heartache. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson," she began, her voice trembling slightly with composed gravity. "I am Lady Eleanor Harrington, and I am in desperate need of your assistance." As she spoke, Holmes listened intently, his keen eyes missing little of the subtle cues Lady Eleanor offered. He leaned forward, his long fingers steepled, as if weighing each word on a finely balanced scale. "Pray tell us everything, Lady Eleanor," he urged softly, the tone that bespoke both sympathy and an insatiable curiosity. Lady Eleanor unrolled a well-worn letter, her hands trembling slightly. "My nephew, Arthur Hawthorne, has vanished. He ventured to Black Abbey, driven by an obsession with the dark tales that cloak its ruins. The villagers speak in hushed tones of a vampire haunting those ancient stones, and my nephew, drawn to this legend, may have fallen into peril because of it." I observed Holmes's reaction. His eyebrows lifted ever so slightly, and a spark of intrigue danced in his eyes. The blend of superstition and potential human intrigue teased his deductive instincts. "A vampire, Lady Eleanor," he repeated thoughtfully. "Do tell me more of these circumstances." Lady Eleanor nodded, her expression flickering with both hope and despair. Arthur was a keen student of history, but his recent letters spoke of an obsession with unravelling the cursed history of Black Abbey. The locals are terrified, speaking of sights in the night, creatures with glowing eyes lurking in the shadows, and Father Benedict, the local priest, insists that the curse is no myth. Holmes's gaze sharpened as he considered her words. "Fear is a potent instrument, Lady Eleanor," he murmured, "often wielded by those who have something to hide. However, the concern in your voice suggests a genuine familial love mixed with a knowledge of complexities beneath this tale." He turned a thoughtful eye toward me, as if to signal that we were embarking upon a challenging case. I recalled moments past when Holmes had encountered cases blending the supernatural with human cunning, and it seemed this was yet another such instance. "Your nephew's disappearance," Holmes continued, "and the mention of this curse, they hint at a scenario where superstition is used to obscure a more earthly truth. Tell me, Lady Eleanor, was there any one person Arthur confided in regarding his plans?" She hesitated, then confessed softly, "There is one, Hugh Carter. He has been a close family friend and advisor for many years. Arthur valued his insights, though recently I noticed a subtle change, as if Carter harboured secrets of his own. He spoke with an unsettling conviction about the curse, convincing Arthur that there was truth to these legends." Holmes's eyes narrowed slightly at the mention of Carter. "Intriguing," he said. "A figure steadfast in his belief, or perhaps manipulative in fostering such fears." He then asked gently, "How does Lady Eleanor feel about Carter's influence on Arthur? Was there distrust or concern?" Lady Eleanor sighed, her gaze distant. "I had my doubts. Carter is persuasive, sometimes too much so. I feared his convictions might lead Arthur into danger, but I could not fathom that he would endanger him deliberately, yet his insistence on the reality of the curse and his guidance in Arthur's quest, these worries weighed heavily on me." Holmes leaned back, clasping his hands. "Faith, or rather the manipulation of faith, can lead even the brightest minds astray," he stated. "And suspicion, like a seed once planted, will grow." He then looked at me. "Watson, prepare for an excursion into the countryside. We shall investigate Black Abbey and uncover the truth behind this legend." I nodded, a mix of apprehension and excitement stirring within me. Holmes's resolve was unyielding, his mind already weaving together the threads of this new mystery. In his hands, superstition became a puzzle to be solved, a maze of human fears laid bare by the light of reason. As Lady Eleanor provided further details, the exact location of Black Abbey, descriptions of the surrounding village, and the last known movements of Arthur, Holmes's mind raced. Each piece of information was catalogued with meticulous precision, his thoughts darting between possibilities like a master chess player considering his next move. Lady Eleanor then shared a final poignant detail. Father Benedict is convinced the curse is real, and he warned me that exploring the abbey might awaken something malevolent. I am torn between my fear for Arthur and the desperate need for answers. Holmes's calm voice broke the silence. Do not worry, Lady Eleanor. We shall proceed with both caution and resolve. The interplay of truth and superstition often obscures the path to clarity, but I am confident that together Watson and I will illuminate the darkness that has befallen your nephew. She clasped her hands, relief mingling with lingering anxiety. Thank you, Mr. Holmes. I only pray that Arthur is unharmed and that the truth can be found before it's too late. As Lady Eleanor departed, Holmes turned to me with his characteristic intensity. Watson, he said quietly, this case, at first glance, a tale of the supernatural, likely masks a more terrestrial deception. Let us set out for this village by first light. There is much to uncover, and we must approach it as we would any other puzzle, piece by careful piece. I gathered my belongings, heart pounding with anticipation. The night stretched ahead, filled with possibilities both thrilling and frightening. The chill in the autumn air hinted at the darkness we were to face, but with Holmes leading the way, my resolve strengthened. Thus began our pursuit of truth in the shadow of Black Abbey, a journey into a world where fear and reason clashed amidst crumbling stone and ancient legends. The stage was set, the players in place, and Holmes's mind, razor-sharp and unyielding, was prepared to see through the veil of superstition to the heart of the matter. Our journey from London to the shadowy environs of Black Abbey felt like a transition from reason to myth, from certainty to whispered uncertainty. After a long ride through the English countryside, Holmes and I arrived in a small, isolated village, clinging to the edges of the Abbey's domain. The village itself seemed suspended in time, an ancient settlement overshadowed by the crumbling ruins of its namesake, Black Abbey. The villagers greeted our arrival with a mixture of caution and wary curiosity. Their faces, lined with the hardship of generations, bore expressions that bordered on fear as they stole glances toward the brooding silhouette of the abbey. The air was heavy with an unspoken dread, as if the very ground whispered secrets best left unspoken. We found lodgings at a modest inn near the village centre. The proprietor, a stout man with kind eyes shadowed by worry, offered little in the way of news, only murmurs about strange sightings and unsettling nights filled with eerie sounds. Holmes remained composed, his expression betraying no emotion, while I noted down the villagers' apprehensive anecdotes with a keen ear. Our first move was to interview Agnes Fairweather, a local woman whose story of witnessing the vampire had become a legend among the fearful villagers. As we walked through narrow lanes, shaded by gnarled trees, Agnes met us at her cottage, her face ashen with both fear and a certain tragic excitement. Inside her humble abode, walls adorned with handmade lace and faded portraits, Agnes recounted her encounter. "It was late last night," she began, her voice quivering like a leaf in the wind. "I was returning from the market when I saw something moving near the edge of the woods. Its eyes, Watson, they glowed with an eerie crimson light. I could not look away." Holmes listened intently, his gaze penetrating yet sympathetic. He posed questions with gentle precision, careful not to further frighten Agnes but sufficient to extract details. "Tell me, Miss Fairweather, was there anything else unusual about the figure?" Holmes inquired calmly. Agnes hesitated, wringing her hands. It seemed almost human, but taller, and its movements were not natural, as if it glided rather than walked. I heard a faint whispering that sent shivers down my spine. I ran as fast as I could, but I fear it followed me for a time. Watson observed how Holmes deftly shifted the conversation to gather facts without dismissing her genuine fear. "Your courage is commendable, Miss Fairweather," he said softly, "and your description, while vivid, might be influenced by the fear that resides in the mind when confronted with the unknown. It is not uncommon for our minds to fill in gaps with what we expect, rather than what is real." Agnes nodded slowly, her eyes reflecting both relief and persistent fear. "I suppose you are right, sir. I was terrified, and in that terror, perhaps I saw more than was there." Having gleaned what we could from Agnes, Holmes and I set out to meet Father Benedict, the local priest known for his fervent belief in the curse. We found him in a small chapel near the village church, a man whose gaunt appearance mirrored the seriousness of his convictions. The flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows on his face as we joined him among the worn pews. Father Benedict's voice resonated with a religious zeal as he recounted the dark lore of Black Abbey. "For generations, our village has lived under the shadow of the vampire curse," he intoned gravely. "The evil that haunts the abbey is not just legend but a tangible threat, one that has claimed lives and driven families into despair." His conviction was so strong that his words carried a weight that threatened to overshadow reason itself. Holmes listened with a calm detachment, his fingers steepled as he allowed the priest to unfold his narrative. While Father Benedict spoke of past incidents, disappearances, strange sounds in the night, and a sense of malevolence emanating from the ruins, Holmes's mind catalogued each detail with cold efficiency. He noted the archaic language, the underlying fear, and the priest's unwavering belief in supernatural explanations. Following our conversation with Father Benedict, we sought out Hugh Carter, whose dismissive attitude and evasiveness had aroused suspicion earlier. We found him near the outskirts of the village, seemingly studying the weather with a distant gaze. Holmes introduced himself and I with our purpose, but Carter responded with an overly casual laugh. "Gentlemen," Carter said, his tone imbued with false ease, "these superstitious tales are mere fancy. No vampire or curse lurks in those ruins. The villagers let their imaginations run wild, and so you should not mind them." But Holmes observed a flicker of unease in Carter's eyes. His voice betrayed a slight tremor when speaking of the abbey, and his hands concealed a subtle gesture that hinted at defensiveness. "Mr. Carter," Holmes began in a measured tone, "your confidence is intriguing, yet I sense a reluctance to speak fully of what you know. Would you care to share why you are so keen to dismiss the villagers' fears?" Carter's composure wavered for just a moment before he regained his facade. "I merely believe that reason must prevail over superstition. There is nothing to fear, nothing that will harm those who approach the abbey with a clear mind." Holmes nodded politely, though his sharp gaze lingered on Carter's hands and the slight sweat on his brow. Watson exchanged a glance with Holmes. Both of us understood that Carter's dismissiveness was a veneer covering something more troubling. As the day faded into twilight, Holmes and I retired to our rooms at the inn, our minds full of the unsettling pieces we had gathered. The village itself seemed to close in around us, the oppressive atmosphere a tangible force pressing against our resolve. The intertwining threads of fear, superstition, and hidden motives began to weave a complex tapestry of suspicion. Holmes mused in the dim light. "We are dealing with a delicate fabric of influence here, Watson. The villagers' fear, nurtured by tales and enforced by figures like Father Benedict, creates a palpable aura that serves to both hide and reveal truths. It will be our task to discern the genuine from the fabricated, and to uncover what truly lies behind the dark legend of Black Abbey." His words resonated in the quiet of the inn-room, a promise of the mysteries yet to be unravelled. I reflected on the uneasy atmosphere of the village, the trembling voices, and the subtle signs of deceit. The path ahead was laden with shadows, but Holmes's unwavering logic was the light by which we would navigate. As we drifted to uneasy sleep, the echoes of whispered fears lingered in my mind. The next steps promised further challenges, but I trusted Holmes implicitly. His incisive mind had yet to be thwarted by any shadow or superstition, and I was certain that soon the veil of mystery around Black Abbey would be lifted, one clue at a time. The sun cast long shadows over the crumbling stone as Holmes and I set out for Black Abbey the following morning. The village now lay behind us, a dim memory washed away by the urgency of our quest. Our path led through a tangle of untamed hedgerows and mist-shrouded woodlands, the air thick with moisture and the scent of damp earth. As we approached the ancient ruins, a palpable hush settled over us, as though the abbey itself were holding its breath, ready to reveal secrets buried deep within its stones. Black Abbey loomed before us, an ominous silhouette against the leaden sky. Its once grand facade was ravaged by time, the stonework crumbling and vines creeping relentlessly across its surface. As we drew near, the oppressive silence seemed to press in, the only sounds the crunch of our footsteps on the overgrown path, and the distant cawing of ravens from the broken towers. Holmes paused at the threshold, his keen eyes sweeping over the overgrown archway and tangled ivy that embraced the ancient masonry. "Observe, Watson," he murmured, "how nature reclaims what man has built. The derelict state of the abbey suggests it has stood forsaken for many years, yet these stones have been disturbed more recently than the histories recount." He knelt to examine the ground, his fingers deftly brushing aside moss to reveal faint imprints in the soft earth. I crouched beside him, peering over his shoulder. "Footprints, Holmes?" I whispered, noting their size and shape. He nodded slowly. "Yes, they are fresh. There's been activity here, not long ago in fact. Look at the depth of the impressions. The ground hasn't had time to settle over them. Whoever passed through must have been large of build, or at least heavy, and moved with purpose." We ventured further inside, the grand entrance giving way to a maze of corridors and forgotten chambers. The air was thick with dust, and the only light came from cracks in the walls and the occasional ray of sun piercing the canopy of broken roof. The stone floors were slick with damp, making each step a careful negotiation with the uneven ground. As we passed through a cavernous hall, Holmes stopped abruptly. A faint scent of smoke tickled his nostrils. "Do you smell that, Watson?" he whispered, eyes narrowing. I nodded. "Yes, a smouldering scent, like wood or something burning." Guided by this subtle clue, we moved cautiously toward a secluded corner of the abbey. There, surrounded by heaps of moss and debris, we discovered a smouldering fire pit. The ashes were damp and appeared to be recent, evidence of a fire that had been maintained not long ago. Holmes knelt beside the pit, examining the remains. He sifted through the ashes with delicate precision, extracting a piece of charred cloth clutched in the embers. The fabric was worn and stained, the pattern on it distinctive, a symbol I recognized faintly from some old heraldic reference. "Watson," Holmes murmured, "this cloth bears a unique insignia, often used by clandestine groups searching for hidden treasures. It is not random. It marks an association." His mind moved swiftly, connecting this clue to earlier hints of treasure seekers and a potential network behind the curse's myth. Someone here is not merely haunting these ruins for the thrill of legends, but searching for something of value, he continued. Leaving the fire pit behind, we pressed onward to a crypt that lay off a narrow side corridor. The passage to the crypt was partially concealed by overgrown vines, and the air grew colder as we descended. The crypt's entrance was marked by a heavy stone door carved with faded carvings, standing as a sentinel to the secrets within. We pushed through the door to find a dim, cavernous space lined with ancient tombs. The atmosphere was heavy with age and decay. The floor was strewn with fallen stones and scattered bones, remnants of long-forgotten rituals and burials. In the centre of this macabre chamber, Holmes's sharp eyes were drawn to an odd symbol etched deeply into the stone floor. It was not part of the original ecclesiastical iconography. Rather, it was a strange amalgam of heraldic motifs and cryptic runes. Holmes traced the contours of the symbol with his fingertips, his face a mask of concentration. "This symbol," he said slowly, is known among certain circles. Treasure hunters and secret societies use marks like this to denote claims over what lies beneath. It signifies both possession and a warning to others. This place holds something of value. A thrill ran through me. The very thought that beneath our feet lay hidden riches, long concealed by centuries of mystery, added a layer of excitement to our investigation. But Holmes remained focused on the tangible evidence before us. He quickly sketched the symbol in his notebook, comparing it in his mind to the clues we had collected so far. As we exited the crypt, the chill of the stone and the oppressive silence of the abbey seemed to follow us like a living thing. Holmes paused at the entrance, his breath visible in the cold air, and gestured for silence. "Do you hear that, Watson?" he whispered, his voice almost reverent. I listened intently, the silence amplifying even the smallest sound. In the distance, beyond the broken walls of the abbey, I heard a faint rustling, footsteps perhaps, echoing through the corridors we had just left behind. Holmes raised his hand in a signal to stay quiet. "We are not alone," he said. "Someone is moving in these ruins. The careful placement of footprints, the well-tended fire pit, and now these distant sounds suggest that our quarry is near." We exchanged a tense glance, each of us aware of the significance of this moment. The combination of decay, hidden symbols, and the faint echo of movement coalesced into a moment of suspense that was almost tangible. My heart pounded in my chest as Holmes led the way toward the source of the sound, moving stealthily so as not to alert whoever lurked in the shadows. The corridor ahead was narrow and winding, the walls slick with moisture and covered in lichen. The faint rustling grew louder, closer, as if whatever had been moving was aware of our presence and altering its path to avoid us. Holmes motioned for me to follow silently, his every step deliberate and calculated. We reached a junction where the corridor branched into multiple paths. Holmes examined the ground carefully, noting disturbances and subtle traces that I could barely discern. "The dead do not walk, Watson, but the living leave unmistakable tracks," he murmured cryptically, a hint of anticipation in his voice. As we studied the area, Holmes spotted a broken branch caught on a low-hanging vine, a sign that our unseen companion had passed through recently. This passage has been used frequently, and the individuals moving here are careful not to leave obvious traces. However, their haste betrays them. We must keep our wits about us. With that, we ventured deeper into the labyrinthine heart of Black Abbey, our senses heightened and our curiosity kindled. Each creaking stone and whisper of wind spoke of secrets longing to be revealed. The exploration of the abbey was not merely a search for clues, but a journey through history itself, where every crumbling wall and faded symbol whispered stories of greed, fear, and human ambition. At length, we emerged from the shadowed corridor onto a small courtyard tucked away behind the main structure. The courtyard was overrun with ivy and wildflowers, a forgotten sanctuary reclaimed by nature. In the far corner, partially obscured by dense brush, we glimpsed a shadow dart across the edge of our vision, a fleeting moment that set our hearts racing. Holmes clutched my arm gently, his gaze fixed on the darkness where the movement occurred. "That," he said quietly, "is another sign that our quarry remains close. We must be prepared for whatever lies ahead." As twilight began to seep into the ruins, we left Black Abbey with more questions than answers. The exploration had unveiled a tapestry of clues, footprints hinting at recent human activity, a fire pit maintained by unseen hands and symbols tied to a network of treasure seekers. The oppressive silence of the abbey belied the hidden forces at work, and Holmes's sharp mind pieced together these fragments with the precision of a seasoned detective. In the dimming light, I could not help but feel that the abbey held more than just answers about the curse. It concealed the very heart of a dark conspiracy. The truth, concealed by layers of superstition and human deceit, beckoned us onward. Holmes, never one to be deterred by the spectral shadows of legend, pressed forward. Our next step, he concluded as we departed the ruins, is to understand who benefits from these myths and what they seek beneath these hallowed stones. That will lead us to our quarry, and I suspect, to the keys of this mystery. As we made our way back through the tangled forest, the echo of our footsteps mingled with the whispers of ancient secrets, guiding us further into the intricate web that bound truth and legend at Black Abbey. Nightfall descended upon Black Abbey with a haunting grandeur. The sky was overcast with swirling clouds, and the moon, a pale sentinel behind a veil of mist, cast eerie shadows across the ruined walls. Holmes and I, cloaked in our respective coats and armed with lanterns and a modest array of investigative tools, prepared ourselves for a midnight stakeout. The oppressive silence was filled with the distant hoot of an owl and the soft rustling of leaves, intensifying the surreal atmosphere that enveloped us. Our chosen spot was a hidden alcove overlooking one of the Abbey's most labyrinthine corridors. Holmes had located this vantage point weeks ago, a place where we could observe movements without being seen. We settled into the shadows, Holmes's figure stoically poised as if he were a statue, and I positioned myself slightly behind him, feeling the weight of anticipation pressing down on my chest. As the night deepened, the oppressive darkness seemed to close in on us. I found myself hyper-aware of every sound: the drip of water from the ancient stone ceilings, the faint scurry of nocturnal creatures, the distant echo of our own breathing. My fingers tightened around the handle of my lantern, though I hardly needed its light. It served more as a comfort against the unknown rather than a beacon of illumination. Holmes, with his usual calm demeanour, maintained a steady vigil. "Patience, Watson," he whispered, glancing at me with a faint smile that belied the tension in the air. "It is often in the silence that truth reveals itself." We waited, breath held, until faint whispers reached our ears. They were carried on the wind, indistinct yet laden with intent. Then, as if answering some silent cue, flickering lights appeared among the ruins, lanterns swinging gently in the breeze, casting a wavering glow that danced along the mossy stones. The movement of these lights was deliberate, not random, suggesting that a person or group was moving through the shadows with purpose. My heart raced. I clutched my notebook tighter, the pages trembling slightly in my grip. Holmes's eyes, sharp and unyielding, never left the undulating pattern of light. "Observe the cadence of the movements, Watson," he murmured. "There is a rhythm here, almost like a procession. And those lights, they are not natural sources, but carefully placed lanterns to create an illusion." As we watched, a shadow separated itself from the main body of lights. Slowly, deliberately, it moved through the ruins. Tall, slender, and moving, with an almost preternatural grace. The figure's red eyes glowed in the faint light, unmistakably reflecting the lantern's beams. In that moment, the legendary vampire seemed to stride before us. A creature of nightmare materialized in the darkness. I felt my breath hitch in my throat. "Holmes," I whispered, my voice trembling despite my efforts to remain composed. "I fear I'm not sure I can confront that apparition." Holmes placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Steady, Watson. Fear is but a hurdle to be overcome with reason and observation. I sense that this figure is central to unravelling the mystery at hand." With quiet resolve, Holmes adjusted his magnifying lens and carefully directed the lantern's beam towards the glowing eyes. I peered over his shoulder, squinting in the dim light as the detective scrutinized the figure. His practiced gaze moved over the contours of the stranger's face, noting every detail with an unerring eye. After a moment, Holmes lowered the lens and whispered, "The red glow is artificial, Watson. I suspect it is produced by reflective materials, possibly glass or crystal lenses affixed to the mask or the eyes. It's a tactic designed to invoke terror and lend an air of supernatural menace to the figure." His words rang true in the stillness of the night, dispelling a fraction of the dread that gripped me. Yet the figure continued its eerie procession, oblivious to our scrutiny. Holmes, ever the epitome of calm, gave a barely perceptible nod. "We must follow this figure," he declared quietly. It will lead us to new insights, possibly even to those who orchestrate this masquerade. We rose silently from our hiding place, careful not to disturb a twig or whisper a sound that might alert our quarry. Our footsteps were light as we trailed the figure through the labyrinthine passages of the abbey, staying at a distance yet maintaining visual contact. The air was thick with suspense, each moment stretching into eternity as we ventured deeper into the heart of the ruins. The figure eventually stopped before a concealed wall that seemed out of place amid the crumbling stones. There, partially obscured by centuries of neglect, Holmes identified a hidden door, masterfully camouflaged with ivy and moss. The stranger moved to the door and Holmes and I exchanged a glance. This must be the entrance to the secret passageway we had deduced earlier, the hidden route beneath the abbey that we had been searching for. Holmes whispered, "This passage must lead to the inner workings of our mystery, where the veil between myth and reality is thinnest. We shall follow, but with utmost caution." Once the figure had slipped through the concealed door, Holmes gently pushed it open as well, and we entered the hidden passage. The narrow corridor was dimly lit by torches mounted on the walls, their flickering light casting dancing shadows that played upon the damp stone. The air was cool and stale, thick with the scent of earth and age. As we advanced, the sounds of our quarry faded into the distance, replaced by the soft echo of our own footsteps and the distant murmur of concealed activities. The passage twisted and turned, leading us deeper into the unknown. My heart hammered in my chest, the confrontation with fear a constant companion as Holmes led us unwaveringly. At one point we paused in a wider chamber that opened into a subterranean space, the source of faint whispering voices becoming audible. The chorus of murmurs emanated from behind a heavy wooden door, its surface carved with intricate symbols that I recognized from our earlier exploration. The dread of what lay beyond mingled with a sense of impending revelation. Holmes signalled for silence and edged closer to the door, placing his ear against the wood. The whispers were distinct now, voices in hushed tones discussing plans, strategies, and secrets, words that hinted at a conspiracy lurking beneath the veneer of the supernatural. The haunting glow of reflective eyes, the carefully placed lanterns, the secret passage, all pieces of a grand puzzle coming together. Though fear still fluttered in my stomach, I drew strength from Holmes's calm presence. "You see, Watson," Holmes whispered after a moment, "it is the human mind, when gripped by fear, that conjures monsters of myth. But in these shadows we find only men, cunning, desperate, and dangerous. Tonight we confront our fears to illuminate the truth behind these apparitions." With that, Holmes prepared to take the next step, his resolve as firm as the stone walls surrounding us. The midnight stakeout had served its purpose. Our fears had led us to the threshold of discovery. The confrontation with the supernatural, or what we believed to be supernatural, had been a lesson in the power of deception and the strength of human courage in the face of the unknown. As I gathered my courage and prepared to face whatever lay beyond that door, I realized that the true horror had not been the vampire itself, but the manipulation of fear. And with Holmes by my side, I felt confident that soon we would unmask the true villains behind the darkness of Black Abbey. The hidden passageway stretched before us like a dark vein beneath the ancient abbey. The flickering torchlight cast dancing shadows on the damp stone walls as Holmes and I carefully advanced, each step measured and deliberate. The murmured voices we had heard earlier grew louder, guiding us deeper into the labyrinth of tunnels that lay concealed beneath Black Abbey. The corridor opened into a larger subterranean chamber, the air thick with the scent of earth and oil, and the faint tang of salt. In this cavernous space, we spied a gathering of figures assembled around a makeshift table littered with maps, ancient tomes, and scattered artifacts. The group was led by a charismatic man, whose presence dominated the room. His dark robe set him apart from the rest, and his commanding voice carried the weight of authority as he addressed his followers. As we concealed ourselves in the shadows, Holmes whispered, "These men are not creatures of the night, but earthly schemers, using the guise of the vampire and curses to cloak their operations. Notice how the symbol on that piece of parchment matches the one we saw in the crypt. They are treasure hunters, guided not by superstition, but by greed. We edged closer, careful not to alert the group to our presence. I strained to listen to the leader's words as he paced before his followers. "The curse of Black Abbey protects more than just our legacy," he intoned, his voice low yet persuasive. "It is our shield from outside interference. The legends, the vampire, the terror, they serve to keep unwelcome eyes away. Only we know the true secrets held within these walls, and we must guard them until the treasure is secure." The man's eyes gleamed with fervour as he continued, weaving a narrative that entwined the supernatural with his own ambitions. Holmes leaned in closer, his brow furrowed. Their rhetoric seeks to exploit the villagers' fears. By invoking ancient curses and supernatural guardians, they ensure that none will dare approach their true purpose. Meanwhile, behind a stack of crates, I discovered a shocking sight. Bound but unharmed, Arthur Hawthorne huddled in a corner. His eyes widened with relief as he understood that we were here to save him from a dark faith. Holmes swiftly moved to unbind Arthur, his movements precise and reassuring. "You are safe now, Mr. Hawthorne," he whispered. "Our task is to rescue you and unravel the machinations of these men." As Arthur recovered, he recounted his ordeal in hushed, trembling tones. "I was taken by these men when I ventured too close to the Abbey. They believed I could lead them to something. I must have shown them secrets unwittingly. They spoke of a network, a group of treasure hunters using the vampire legend to obscure their real motives. I feared for my life, but never lost hope that someone would come for me." Holmes exchanged a meaningful glance with me. The puzzle was falling into place. The vampire legend was a fabrication, a tool used by a band of smugglers and treasure hunters led by this cult leader to keep the curious away and to control the narrative around Black Abbey. As we quietly freed Arthur from his bonds, our minds raced with the implications. The leader and his followers were not just petty thieves, they were part of a larger, well-organized network. To reveal their operations, we needed to gather more evidence and understand the structure of their hierarchy. Our work continued silently as we observed from the shadows, noting details that could unravel their plans. I watched as a subordinate unrolled a map of the region, marked with the same symbols and cryptic notes. Holmes carefully pocketed a scrap of this map when no one was looking, knowing it might prove invaluable later. During our reconnaissance, Holmes's keen eyes caught a figure moving furtively near the edge of the chamber, a man who didn't seem to belong to the inner circle of these treasure hunters. The figure slipped away quickly, but Holmes tracked his movements with subtle gestures, making note of potential leads. Our attention returned to the cult leader, who now addressed his followers in more intimate terms. "Hugh Carter has done well, but we must reward him for his loyalty," the leader proclaimed, nodding toward a man with a calculating glance. Carter, previously dismissed as merely a suspicious character, now stood clearly among the trusted lieutenants. This confirmed Holmes's earlier suspicions. Carter was deeply involved in the operation. The leader continued, "Carter will ensure our plans remain secret from Lady Eleanor, feeding her misinformation to keep her family at bay. He is the key to our network's success, entrusted with delicate tasks that require utmost discretion." The reverberation of Carter's name throughout the chamber sent a jolt of realization through Holmes and me. Carter had not been an innocent bystander, but an integral part of this web of deceit, guiding the family astray with false assurances and dark promises. From our vantage point in the shadows, we quietly conferred. Holmes whispered, "Arthur's capture was no accident. Carter's involvement, along with this network, shows the lengths these men will go to protect their prize. It is clear that our task is not just to retrieve Arthur and break a legend, but to expose this entire operation." Arthur, now standing beside us, nodded in agreement, his voice steadier. "I want to help. I know these men, at least some of them from my time among them. If my knowledge can aid you, I am at your service." Holmes gave him a reassuring smile. Your cooperation is invaluable, Mr. Hawthorne. Together, we shall bring this conspiracy into the light. With Arthur freed and our understanding of their scheme deepening, we quietly withdrew from the chamber, planning our next steps. The corridors of the hidden passage echoed with the distant murmur of planning and deceit, but we had the advantage of insight and strategy. Outside in the cool, shadowed tunnel, Holmes whispered, "Our retreat must be as quiet as our entry. We have gathered crucial intelligence, but we must now use it to set a trap. The next move is to bring these smugglers to justice without alerting them to our knowledge." As we retraced our steps through the winding corridors, a sense of purpose filled me. We had pierced through the cloak of legends to uncover a network of human greed and treachery. The true horror behind the curse of Black Abbey was not an ancient vampire, but the men who manipulated fear for their own ends. Our hearts beat in unison with the rhythm of the passage, as Holmes, Watson, and an increasingly cooperative Arthur prepared to orchestrate the unravelling of a conspiracy that had thrived in the shadows for far too long. With the dawn still a distant promise, Holmes, Arthur Hawthorne, and I returned to the village with a carefully concocted plan. The revelation of the smugglers' lair and the extent of their deception had given us the leverage we needed to set a trap. We moved with quiet determination, Holmes orchestrating each step like a master conductor, ensuring that every detail aligned perfectly with his strategy. At the crack of twilight, Holmes convened a discreet meeting with Lady Eleanor and the local constabulary in a secluded corner of the village. The atmosphere was tense, yet resolute, for we were about to pit cunning against cunning in a battle of wits under the veil of night. Lady Eleanor, though shaken by recent revelations, stood firm with quiet strength. "Mr. Holmes," she said softly, "I will do whatever is necessary to save my nephew's honour and bring these men to justice." Holmes nodded, his demeanour calm and confident. "Lady Eleanor, your assistance is invaluable. Together with the local law enforcement, we will orchestrate a situation where the smugglers believe they have the upper hand, while in truth they have walked into a carefully laid snare." He outlined the plan succinctly. We would spread word, discreetly, that the family possessed a clue leading to an even greater treasure hidden in the abbey, hoping that this bait would lure the smugglers out of their stronghold. Meanwhile, the constabulary would hide in strategic positions, awaiting the moment when the smugglers made their move. As night fell, Holmes directed Lady Eleanor to send a trusted courier, a local youth known for his discretion, into the abbey with a false message. This message would plant the idea that Arthur, though still in captivity, had uncovered a vital piece of the puzzle, a hint at the location of a long-lost artifact beneath the abbey. The promise of this greater prize was sure to stir the greed of the criminals. Hidden behind crumbling walls and shadows, the constabulary took their positions around the abbey and the village outskirts. I could feel my pulse quicken, each whispered command from Holmes carrying the weight of impending action. The darkness was not empty but alive with the quiet energy of anticipation. Soon we saw movement, silhouettes emerging from the shadows, their forms tense and purposeful. Holmes's trap was springing to life. The smugglers, lured by the promise of a greater reward, had taken the bait. They crept toward the abbey with furtive glances, their footsteps muffled on the mossy ground. As they approached the predetermined area, Lady Eleanor, disguised among the villagers, signalled Holmes that her role was ready. At Holmes's nod, she stepped forward under the guise of a concerned local, feigning ignorance while subtly guiding the smugglers into the corner of their trap. Holmes, hidden from view, coordinated with the constabulary through discreet signals. The smugglers, sensing that the moment was ripe, divided into groups, one approaching the abbey's main gate and another gathering near the concealed passage we had discovered earlier. Their leader, a man of dark robes and commanding presence, seemed to sense something amiss, yet his determination overrode his caution. In the flash of a well-timed lantern, the constabulary sprang into action. Officers emerged from hidden alcoves, surrounding the smugglers with shouts of, "Stop! In the name of the law!" The criminals, taken by surprise, scattered in disarray, their carefully laid plans unravelling before their eyes. Holmes stepped into the clearing, his tall figure illuminated by the lantern's glow, calm amidst the chaos. "There is no escape," he declared, his voice carrying over the tumult. "The truth has come to light, and with it, your schemes are laid bare." A cacophony of confusion ensued as the smugglers attempted to flee. However, Holmes had anticipated their every move. Knowing the labyrinthine layout of Black Abbey and its surroundings, he directed the officers in swift counter-movements. The narrow alleys and secret passages that once provided escape routes were now traps of their own design, flanked by armed constabulary, ready to intercept any attempt at flight. In the midst of the fray, the cult leader tried to rally his followers. "We meant no real harm," he shouted desperately, his voice echoing off stone walls. "The curse was our protection, the legend a necessary deception to guard what is ours." But his words fell on deaf ears, drowned out by the sound of binding ropes, clanking shackles, and the triumphant chorus of justice being served. Holmes confronted the cult leader directly as he was led away by officers. "Your justification is nothing but the ramblings of a man who thrives on fear and deceit," Holmes intoned. "Using superstition to conceal greed is the most insidious crime of all. Your control over the village through fabricated terror ends tonight." As the last of the smugglers were taken into custody, Holmes turned to Lady Eleanor, who had been watching from the shadows, her face a mix of relief and sorrow. "Thank you, Lady Eleanor," he said quietly, "for your courage and assistance. Tonight, we have dismantled a web of lies that has ensnared so many." Lady Eleanor nodded, her voice trembling with emotion. "It was all I could do to protect my family and this village. I am grateful beyond words, Mr. Holmes." Arthur, who had been reunited with us moments earlier, stepped forward. "I owe you my life, Holmes. I was mistaken in thinking the legends held truth. It was human treachery, masked in myth, that endangered me." His gratitude was sincere, his eyes reflecting both relief and newfound wisdom. Holmes surveyed the scene with a mixture of satisfaction and pragmatic determination. The trap had been sprung with near-perfect precision, and the smugglers, those architects of fear, were now in the hands of the law. However, his mind was already racing ahead, piecing together the clues and considering the next steps in dismantling the broader network connected to their operation. As officers marched the apprehended criminals away, Holmes gathered with me, Lady Eleanor, and Arthur to review the events of the night. "We have succeeded in our immediate goal," he acknowledged, his voice thoughtful. "But there remains a larger tapestry of intrigue that extends beyond these hills. Hugh Carter's betrayal and the symbol we found suggest that this network has tendrils reaching further than we initially believed." I watched his steely gaze as he continued. "Our work is not finished. Justice for tonight is but the first step in unraveling a greater conspiracy. But for now, let us take a moment to appreciate the victory. We have dismantled a ring that exploited fear to manipulate others, and we have freed those who were bound by their deception." Lady Eleanor's expression softened as she responded, "The truth, once uncovered, has a liberating power. I trust that with your guidance, Holmes, this village will find peace from the shadows that haunted it." Holmes gave a slight nod, his features reflecting both resolve and compassion. "Indeed, Lady Eleanor. Justice has been served this night, but the vigilance against such deceptions must remain ever constant." As the first hints of dawn coloured the sky, a sense of calm settled over the abbey and the village. The trap had closed successfully, restoring a measure of safety and truth to a place long shrouded in fear. Though the night's events were over, the echoes of our actions would resound in the hallowed halls of Black Abbey and beyond, a testament to the power of reason and courage in the face of darkness. The village, once gripped by terror and whispers of curses, now found itself bathed in the gentle light of truth. In the aftermath of the night's dramatic events, the local inn became the setting for a gathering not of fear, but of understanding and relief. The once dreaded shadows of Black Abbey had been dispelled by reason, and Holmes took it upon himself to illuminate the full breadth of the unravelled mystery to all who would listen. Sitting before a roaring fire, Lady Eleanor, Arthur, Father Benedict, and several villagers gathered expectantly as Holmes stood, his tall figure composed and authoritative. The hush of anticipation mingled with the crackle of burning logs, setting a sombre yet hopeful tone for his explanation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Holmes began, his voice clear and resonant, "tonight I shall explain how the great myth of the vampire that haunted Black Abbey was crafted not by supernatural forces, but by men who sought to use superstition to further their own ends." I watched as Father Benedict's weathered face reflected both scepticism and cautious interest. Holmes continued. "Agnes Fairweather's testimony of glowing red eyes, for instance, was not the result of an unearthly creature, but a cunning device. The glow was produced by reflective lenses affixed to masks or implements, an illusion perfected to frighten even the bravest souls." A murmur of surprise rippled among the villagers. Holmes elaborated further. "Those eerie lights you saw flickering in the darkness were not will-o'-the-wisps or ghostly apparitions, but strategically placed lanterns set to cast unnatural shapes and shadows. The whispers that rattled your hearts came from speaking tubes and cleverly hidden mirrors, designed to disorient and frighten." He paced slowly before the fire, the flames dancing in his eyes as he mapped the rational explanations. The symbol etched in the crypt, which we discovered earlier, was not a mark of ancient evil, but a sign used by treasure hunters to stake their claim. It connected the operations here to a larger network of treasure seekers, men of greed cloaked in the garb of legend. Father Benedict shifted uncomfortably, the weight of his years and his beliefs pressing upon him. "But, Mr. Holmes," he murmured, "the fear it instilled was so real. How do we reconcile our faith in such legends with the rational explanations you provide?" Holmes regarded him kindly but firmly. "Reverend, faith and reason are not mutually exclusive. The power of fear lies in its ability to transform ordinary circumstances into extraordinary terrors. It takes little for the mind to weave a creature of the night out of shadows and sounds. Our duty is to confront that fear with truth, not to scorn the feelings it engenders." Lady Eleanor, her eyes glistening with both relief and residual sorrow, stepped forward. "Mr. Holmes, your work has not only freed my nephew, but also lifted a curse that has burdened this village for generations. Yet I worry for those who still hold to the old legends. How do we move forward?" Holmes offered a gentle smile. "By understanding that monsters are not born in crypts, but in the minds of those who seek to control others through fear. Education, compassion, and rational thought are our greatest tools against such manipulation." Arthur, now free from both physical and psychological bonds, added, "I was reckless and driven by my desire to uncover truth, but I now see how easily one can fall prey to deception. I have learned that seeking wisdom should always be tempered by caution and the guidance of those who love us." The conversation turned to the future, as villagers asked questions about how to prevent such fear from taking hold again. Holmes shared insights on critical thinking, the importance of scrutinizing extraordinary claims, and the value of community resilience in the face of uncertainty. As the night waned and the fire died down to embers, Holmes walked with Father Benedict and Lady Eleanor outside, under a sky streaked with the first light of dawn. The oppressive aura that once hung over Black Abbey had lifted, replaced by a clear horizon filled with possibility. Father Benedict, though his faith in supernatural law remained, expressed a newfound openness. "Perhaps I have been too quick to dismiss the rational explanations," he admitted. "There is wisdom in seeking the truth behind our fears." Lady Eleanor sighed with relief, her countenance lighter than it had been in recent times. "I thank you, Mr. Holmes, for bringing clarity and peace to our troubled hearts. The curse of Black Abbey, it seems, was never born of dark magic, but of dark hearts." Holmes looked out over the quiet village and the distant silhouette of Black Abbey, now just a monument to history rather than a beacon of dread. The resolution of the case had not only saved Arthur and the village from immediate peril, but it also offered a path forward, one illuminated by truth and reason, dispelling the lingering spectres of superstition once and for all.
This was Sherlock Holmes and the Vampire of Black Abbey by N. Laverty, an original story produced by Nocturnal Tales.